The Skeleton Dance is one of the most important cartoons ever created. That might sound like a hot take, but it's not. It brought animation out of the silent era and helped kick off the golden age of animation. And even over 90 years later, it's still as wonderful as it was when it was first released. But how did it come to be, and what legacy does it have that warrants such acclaim? Well, find a nice coffin to lounge in, and relax as we learn about this groundbreaker together. The Skeleton Dance was the brainchild of 3 men: director Walt Disney, animator Ub Iwerks, and composer Carl Stalling. Walt at this point was just getting established in Hollywood as a filmmaker, thanks to the success of Mickey Mouse. Look back at all those early Mickey Mouse cartoons. All of them had his name at the top, which was a huge deal, especially after everything with Oswald. His greatest successes were yet to come, but audiences were just starting to learn the name Disney. But you all know his story, so let's get to the other 2 men. I've talked about Iwerks on this channel in the past, but in case you need a refresher, Ub Iwerks is arguably the most important figure in animation history. He designed Mickey Mouse and animated many of the early Disney cartoons, but his reach is so much more than that. He created the Xerox cell printing, bringing the animator's work directly to the screen, and discovered how to combine live action and animation, starting with the Alex comedies and going all the way to Mary Poppins. He developed a lot of unique animation techniques, like an early version of the multiplane camera, and different camera effects. He is also the reason you know who Chuck Jones is. I cannot overstate his contributions. Once again, I am just scratching the surface of all he's done. Carl Stalling, the man behind the music, might be the most prolific composer you've never heard of. He got his start at Disney, orchestrating many of the early Mickey Mouse and Silly Symphony cartoons. He even voiced Mickey's first spoken lines of dialogue in The Carnival Kid.
Hot dog! Hot dog!
When he left Disney in the early 30s, he freelanced for a while until 1936, when he was hired by Leon Schlesinger to compose music for Warner Brothers cartoons. There, he would write the music for every single Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoon until 1958. Pretty much single-handedly creating the cartoon sound. You may be familiar with this, or this, or even this. All him. That was all his doing. Though all of that was yet to come. The story of the Skeleton Dance begins in 1928. Riding high off the success of Mickey Mouse and Steamboat Willie, Walt approached Stalling, who he had met in Kansas City, to do some scores for future cartoons, starting with the Opry House. Fun fact, this was the first cartoon to feature Lietz's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2, which has since become a cartoon staple. So, yeah, another thing you have Carl Stalling to thank for. Walt wasn't much of a music person, something he even admitted himself. When Fantasia was being produced, he left the music choices to everyone else. So he didn't give much direction to Stalling for doing the music, leading to them clashing over it. If you have an idea in your head and can't articulate it well, it's gonna make things difficult. From this, Stalling had the idea to do a series centered on the music, where the animation was dictated by the music, instead of the other way around. Walt heard the idea, loved it, and ran with it. Thus, the Silly Symphonies were born. The first film in the series? The Skeleton Dance. Now that we've finally reached the skeletons, let's talk about the Danse Macabre. The Danse Macabre, or the Dance of Death, was a common trope in medieval European artwork. Skeletons dancing, sometimes with living human beings. It was a way for people to confront the nature of human mortality, at a time where Europe was ravaged by wars and plagues. Good thing we don't have that problem nowadays. No matter if you're a king or a beggar, we all must do the Danse Macabre. It must happen to all of us, and it can happen at any time or any moment. While no humans are depicted in the cartoon, it's pretty easy to connect the medieval imagery to the skeletons rising from their graves to dance. Walt had actually wanted to use Camille Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre for the cartoon soundtrack, but he couldn't get the rights. Not that he had wanted to pay royalties for it anyhow. So he asked Stalling if he could make something similar. What he came up with was a foxtrot in a minor key, which offered a unique sound. There was also some sampling of Grieg's March of the Dwarves. Though while Walt had the vision and Stalling had the music, the cartoon was almost single-handedly drawn by Iwerks. He took Stalling's musical score and Walt's story outline and drew accordingly, experimenting with perspective and the characters' weights. It was a way for him to show off the darker side of his humor and style, something he carried over into future cartoons he worked on. The Skeleton Dance premiered on August 22nd, 1929, and was a critical and commercial success. A critic from the Daily Film called it a classy novelty, and one of the most novel cartoon subjects ever shown on a screen. A critic from Variety said that the title described the cartoon, but not the high number of laughs in it, while warning parents not to bring their kids. It played at the Carthay Circle Theater in Los Angeles, the same place where Snow White would premiere 8 years later, the Fox Theater in San Francisco, and the Roxy Theater in New York. It would be shown again at the Roxy in September, making it the first film to receive a return engagement. The cartoon was a hit, and successfully kicked off the Silly Symphony series. It showed that Disney cartoons had range. Mickey established them, and the Skeleton Dance showed that it wasn't a fluke. It was arguably their first step in diversifying, and helped them turn into the media empire they are today. It's no wonder it's lasted for so long, and why so much has been influenced by it. The skeletons would show up again in the haunted house. When Mickey stumbles into a haunted house, a mysterious phantom, no not that one, and a bunch of skeletons get him to play music so they can dance along. Animation was recycled from the Skeleton Dance along with the character designs. The cartoon had premiered just a few months earlier, so it was probably still fresh on the team's mind. 4 years later, the skeletons appeared again in The Mad Doctor as obstacles while Mickey tried to save Pluto from the evil Dr. XXX. After Iwerks left Disney, he did a lot of work for other studios. Columbia Pictures had a cartoon series very similar to the Silly Symphonies called Color Rhapsody, and Iwerks directed several cartoons for them. One of them was Skeleton Frolic, released in 1937. It's basically the Skeleton Dance in color. A lot of the same gags were recycled. Not that Skeleton Frolic isn't worth your time, after all. It's worth seeking out just to see how much animation had advanced in the decades since Skeleton Dance's release. The skeletons would appear a few times in House of Mouse. They can be seen in the episode Dennis the Duck, dedicated to black and white Disney cartoons, and in 2 Halloween episodes, Halloween with Hades and House Ghosts. In the latter episode, they joined the Happy Haunts in a rocking rendition of Grim Grinning Ghost. More recently, they cameoed in episodes of the Paul Rudish Mickey Mouse cartoons. The second Epic Mickey game featured a transition level based on the Skeleton Dance, and the short was an unlockable for players who found the film reels. Elsewhere in the Disney realm, the Skeleton Dance would go on to inspire Phantom Manor at Disneyland Paris. The catacomb scene in the attraction is filled with skeletons climbing out of their crypts and partying. It's pretty easy to connect the dots to the cartoon. You could probably extend that to the Haunted Mansion at large, with all the ghosts rising from their graves to have fun. The cartoon is prominently featured in fireworks shows at the annual Halloween events, the most recent one of which has clips from the cartoon projected onto the castle. Even outside of the scope of Disney, the Skeleton Dance has been referenced time and time again. If you see a bunch of skeletons dancing together, it's probably a reference to this cartoon. My personal favorite one is in The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. In the episode Hillbilly, Billy's dream chasing leads him to Uncle Chokey's farm, where a gramophone can turn the world into a Rubber Hose cartoon. The gramophone attacks when Mandy proclaims her hatred for retro cartoons, trapping her and Grim in the Rubber Hose world. As it turns out, Grim was one of those original skeletons, originally performing it 300 years ago.
All right, boys, if we do this, we do it my way. Now, it's step, left, kick, right.
This is canon. You can't change my mind. The Skeleton Dance might not be complex by today's standards, nor is it even scary, but it hasn't lost an ounce of its charm. Show it to any kid today and they'll be just as enthralled as audiences were 90 years ago. It's timeless, plain and simple. So, next time you're getting in a spooky mood, pop this on and enjoy the swinging wake. And that concludes the video. If you'd like to support the show, please consider hitting up my Patreon or Ko-fi page. If not, then make sure to like and subscribe to see more of my stuff. Now I'll pass the question off to you. What did you think of the skeleton dance and its derivatives? Are there any other Disney shorts you think deserve the same spotlighting? Whatever you're thinking, let me know down in the comments. But that's all the time I've got for today. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.